Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Did you like that song? Had you heard it before? Yes? A clove will help my throat from getting choked up. Okay. So which canto are we reading from? You guys have the sheets with it? Hey, Bina said, Vira, Rajanam, Dema, Lakshana, Yasmin, Vinastate, Nirpatir, Aishvaryad, Avarohati, Satama Vinasedvira, Rajanam Shema Lakshana, Yasmin Here, Aishvaryad Avarohati, Satema Vinasedvira, Rajanam Shema Lakshana, Yashmin Vinaste Nripatir, Yad Avarohati, Sate Ma Vinasedvira, Rajanam Shema Lakshanae, Yashmin Vinaste Nripatir, Aishvaryad Avarohati, word for word. Sa, that spiritual life. A, by you. Ma, do not. Vinaset, let it be spoiled. Hira, O hero. Prajanam, of the people. Dema Lakshana, cause of prosperity. Yasmin, which, Vinasate, being spoiled. Ripati, the king. Aishvaryat, from opulence. Avarohati, right place. Is that better there? Where? Okay. Close. It wants to get away there, though, doesn't it? Okay. Now? Okay. Here is the verse. The sages continued, O great hero, for this reason you should not be the cause of spoiling the spiritual life of the general populace. If their spiritual life is spoiled because of your activities, you will certainly fall down from your opulent and royal position. Interesting purport. Formerly, in practically all parts of the world, there were monarchies. But gradually, as monarchy declined from the ideal life of religion to the godless life of sense gratification, monarchies all over the world were abolished. However, simply by abolishing monarchy and replacing it with democracy is not sufficient unless the government men are religious and follow in the footsteps of great personalities. Well, that says it right there. Following in the footsteps of all the great personalities. I think it's interesting in this, as he said, that sometimes when we're talking to people like Tukaram in Laguna Beach, he always tries to give people encouragement and say, you're so good at doing this, even giving them a little more praise than they're really up to, and that way they try to live up to this position. And we saw earlier in this that the sages knew that if King Venu didn't listen to the good advice, they were going to have to destroy him. But they still give him the good advice, and they're calling him a hero so he can live up to this condition. And again, the leaders should be like the parents that tell their children, don't do as I do, do as I say. Does that work well? No, it doesn't work well. Krishna mentions something about this in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He says that in the past, kings like Janaka attained perfection solely by engaging in prescribed duties. Therefore, to educate the general people, you should perform these prescribed duties, doing the proper things that are designated for your position in life to help yourself and the whole society advance spiritually. That's not in the verse. That was my comment on that. And then Krishna says that whatever great men do, common men will follow. And whatever exemplary acts they perform, the common people will pursue them. And then Krishna mentions, he says, although there's no activities that are prescribed for me within the universe, and although I don't need to obtain anything, nor do I want anything, I still engage in prescribed duties. And so he says that if I did not perform, that if I did not engage in my prescribed duties carefully, then certainly all the men would follow my path. And he says, if I didn't perform prescribed duties, then it would bring ruination, and because they're not acting according to Dharma, there would be unwanted population. The unwanted children destroy the world. You see that. They're frustrated and they create all kinds of problems. And he said that therefore there would be a lack of peace in the world. So again, in the verse here, the sages are saying that for this reason, you should not be the cause of spoiling the spiritual life of the general populace. If their spiritual life is spoiled because of your activities, you will certainly fall down from your opulent and royal position. So we can see this is the difference in where leaders spoil the activities, or the leaders who present the right idea. Where should we start from here? It's funny, someone would ask my father, how are things going with you? He says, well, should I start with the sublime and go down to the ridiculous, or start with the ridiculous things and go up to the sublime? So we'll start with the ridiculous leaders, and then we'll work up to the sublime. Were there any leaders in history who did like this, spoiled the spiritual life of the people by not acting properly? Were there? That's not a rhetorical question. Were there or not? Were there? No, all the leaders were perfect? No? Well, look back in history. Let's go to Julius Caesar. Now, in Rome, they had a senate that advised the people, and they had a ruler, but the leader of the army was not supposed to enter Rome. His prescribed duty was he was supposed to stay outside the city and live by this prescribed duty so that it wouldn't spoil the citizens' feeling by having the military too much in control. Well, he went against this, and he took over the government, and then, of course, they killed him. But then, of course, his nephew, Augustus Caesar, took over, and things got worse from there. We went to leaders like Caligula, who did terrible debauched things. They would have orgies with lots of women, and they would engage in gluttony, which means you'd eat so much, and then you'd throw it up so that you could eat more. This is one of the 7 venial sins that the Catholics come up with: vanity and gluttony and lust. And gluttony, are not supposed to eat it. We don't eat the prasadam and then throw it up so we can eat more, right? Do we do that? Is that one of the processes? No, we don't do that. So, and then Nero burned up Rome, and while Rome is burning, he's like playing the harp. No. He should be setting an example and doing something about it. Lucian, in your firefighting activities, if instead of putting out the fire, if you were playing the harp in the middle of it, would you be appreciated? Maybe not. No, there'd be a big article. Firefighter plays harp while city burns. But he was the emperor, so he could do what he wanted. And that's what Prabhupada's mentioning here, that it's not as important whether the system is democracy or whether it's monarchy. The trouble with democracy is that you can elect a leader who may not be qualified because the people voting them in may not be qualified. But you can also get, in a monarchy, it's harder to get them out when they're unqualified. So the main thing is people need to know what's qualified first before they vote, or before someone goes in charge, or before they take a spiritual master. They need to know what's qualified. So the Roman Empire deteriorated more. The Emperor Justinian did all kinds of terrible things, and I think he got the plague. The plague came along, and because of this karmic activities, things went backwards about 1,000 years ago. And then you had some other leaders come along with, we had Cortez went to Mexico, and other explorers went to Peru, and the one, when the Inca king said that he would give the gold and silver if he wasn't killed, he gave the gold and silver, and they killed him anyway. So these were the kind of rulers that didn't live up to their position. And then we have Napoleon Bonaparte came along, and he engaged in the spoiling of people's spiritual life. And before that in Russia you had Ivan the Terrible, and he would just kill his wives, because if he wanted another one he'd have to accuse them of being a religious heretic, and then you could kill them. Just like in the Salem witch trials, they'd accuse people of being a witch, because if you discovered someone was a witch, they were bad, and then you were able to take their property. But who was bad and who was good? The person being accused of a witch is bad just because you accuse them, and therefore when you take over their property, you're good. This is what happens when you have bad leaders. Is one person was an extremist politician. He says when good people do bad things, it's not the same as when bad people do bad things. Because if they're good people, it's not the same when they do bad things. But is it? It's like the mafia guys say, we're going to kill you, but don't worry, it's not personal, it's just business. Does that make you feel better? No, because you're getting killed. It's the result that counts. So by setting this kind of example, that people think that way, and they can exploit other people. By if I decide I'm good and you're bad, therefore I get all the rights, and I can do what I want. They set this example, and the people follow. Can you think of some other ways this comes up? Where's one of the big things that comes up where you decide you're good and someone else is bad? What does this come up in? Someone has to think of something. Where do they do it with whole groups of people? They're bad and I'm good. What is it? But genocide comes from what? Judging people based on what? Their country, their religion, their race. If I decide brown people are bad, I can steal from you and keep your money because I'm good, right? Is that what it means? What's that saying? Pretty is as pretty does. If I'm going to proclaim myself good, I better act good. It's like if you want to feel good, then you should be good. You can't do bad and feel good. It doesn't work, no matter how powerful you are. You see, some of these leaders are miserable because they're doing bad, and they suffer the reaction. They may suffer the misery in opulence, but they're still suffering the misery. Isn't it what Adolf Hitler decided? He decided that the Jews were bad and the shapes of their heads were bad, and therefore that we could kill them all because they were going to exploit us because they were so different than the other ones. Turns out it wasn't true. The Nazis wanted the photographer to come up with the perfect specimen of a German baby. So he gave them the picture and they put it on the front of all their magazines. But the photographer did a spoof on them. It was a Jewish baby. So we see this is what happens. One race decides the other one is bad, and then the other people decide in return that that one is bad. And this is what comes when the leaders do this. When Adolf Hitler decided that these people were bad and they should be destroyed, instead of looking at their own character, Hitler wanted to prove that the German race was better, so he had the Olympics in Berlin in 1936. And he thought that the Jewish people and the people of African origin were inferior in every single way. So when Jesse Owens came, who was a person of African origin, but he's American, and he could outrun the German ones. And Hitler is watching this with disgust. How can this bad person be winning? But what he should have looked at, if you look at the pictures, that Hitler, he took some vitamins that they would inject him with, but the vitamins had amphetamines and Vicomolton, I think. They gave this to the German soldiers too. And it had some vitamins in it, so it's good for you. And he also took some kind of opiate drug, and he liked cocaine too. So he's sitting there like this going. Now, if you're going like that and you're criticizing the black man because he's running fast, now who's bad and who's not? Shouldn't you be happy that that the man is able to compete and do well? And look how poorly you're doing. He's shaking because the amount of drugs I'm doing. So is he qualified to lead a nation? The soldiers got to do, that's how they do the blitzkrieg. They would do days on the what was it called? They had a name for it that they gave them, a package of the speed to do. And this is what the leaders were giving people, was this kind of example. Trouble is, you even have this in the church groups. We were talking about how the whole Protestant reform came because in Catholic Church, the Pope is supposed to be infallible. Well, this word doesn't get used often. Usually we only find it in Prabhupada's books. But just because they declare something is infallible doesn't mean it is. And I figure that one company must have taken that from Prabhupada's books, because you see there's a billboard and the person has the lipstick, and the lipstick is called infallible. But which lipstick is actually infallible? Can a lipstick be infallible? No, but it sure is a catchy name, isn't it? It is good advertising. It's not the truth, but it's good advertising, right? So one says, are you smoking more and enjoying it less? See, this is what happens, how the leaders let them advertise. Are they smoking more and enjoying it less? Are they? Or are they enjoying it more? I remember reading this in the junior high, that materially there's called the law of diminishing returns. So when you buy the 12-ounce can of soda, the price per ounce is more than when you buy the 2 liters, which is about 72 ounces. Because the more you take of it, the less you enjoy it. So are they smoking more and enjoying it less? Of course they are. So what is the solution? Switch brands, of course. Is that the solution? Is it? No, but that's the solution they offer. And people think, oh, that's it? And that's what you call chewing the chewed. All the juice is gone. So what I'll do is find some more sugar cane with the juice is gone, and that it's okay. They do that with a gum. People chew it, and then they put it under their table at the school and take it out tomorrow. Is there much juice tomorrow? Does it automatically refill? No, this is chewing the chewed. But when the leaders are showing us how to do this way, you know, it's like fortunate they have in many countries, they want the leader to be a duly married person. It's very hard for a bachelor to become president. Well, James Buchanan was. He wasn't a good president, though. And I think he was the only one. They're all married, and they talk about family values, because it was like the one person was arrested for giving espionage to the Russian girls. He was a scientist, and you know, he was about 65, and this beautiful girl about 35 just like was all over him and pays attention to her and goes home with him and spends like a few weeks with him. And sure enough, he gives her all these secrets. They tell him, look, you're 68 years old, and a woman half your age is just all over you all of a sudden. Don't you think something must be amiss? But because people are so interested in what they want, they just follow this example, and they trust her. After all, if somebody gives you sense gratification, that means you can trust them, yes? Is that what it means? No. They use this as a way to exploit you. Do you think they're going to send a woman older than him who's sincere? Or are they going to send a beautiful woman that's already studied his file and knows exactly what he likes and everything else, right? By coincidence, she just showed up in a bar where he was drinking, right? Isn't it funny how coincidences happen? But it isn't a coincidence. So this is what happens when the leaders don't guide the people. We see this every day. Leaders come along. And that was true as in the Catholic Church that we were bringing up, is that Alexander Borgia, who became Pope Gregory, he and his son wanted to kill. He had a daughter, which he shouldn't have even had a daughter and a son, being the celibate leader of the church. But he wanted to kill his daughter's husband so that he and the son could have sex with the daughter. Now, isn't this like the ultimate debauchery? On the one hand, he's supposed to be a celibate monk, and yet he and his son want to have sex with the daughter? Is there like several things wrong with this? If he has to be involved with someone, isn't it better he's not the monk and the leader and that he's married? Not that you kill your daughter's husband so that you and your son can be involved with him? Does this show that he might not have had the spiritual potency to be the leader? And because of this, the whole Protestant thing came around. Martin Luther started the Lutheran Church. And then, of course, King Henry VIII wanted to get married again, and they wouldn't let him get married, so he just started his own church. So we find when the leaders do these things for the wrong purposes, then how can the followers follow? Just like when they all came to Rome in the year 1500 to celebrate the 15th anniversary of Christ's birth, they all did debauched things, because if the Pope is the leader and he doesn't follow, how can the followers follow? And say, okay, now we're going to have a Smoking Anonymous meeting, and I'm the leader of Smokers Anonymous, and I light up a cigarette. Is that going to be helpful? If I'm the leader and I can't follow, then what? That's why generally, especially now, we have Prabhupada as the acharyas, and the persons who are gurus try to teach them in that. And generally, we try to make the principles of Krishna consciousness more important than ourselves. We don't, as average devotees, we don't want to propound that we can never fall away, and we're so great that we're up there, the big head high potentate. Just call me big head high potentate, right? And then if we have some trouble, people are really shocked. But if we let them know we're not perfect, but we're trying to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, then they'll have another idea. So the principle is we don't have to do the right things. We just tell people to do as we say, not as we do. Correct? Is that it? Is that correct? No. If you set the people will follow the example more than they'll follow won't they? So then we need people to set the example. The Acharya is a teacher who sets by example. And so we've had some good leaders in the Vedic times. What good leaders did we have? Was Richard Nixon a good leader? No, he had to quit because they went and tapped he had them bug the Democratic Convention and listen to all the information. So he probably wasn't a good leader, right? But Maharaj Yudhisthira was. He never told lies, and he ruled the kingdom for the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to help all the other people. This is why this whole war of the battlefield of Kurukshetra was fought. And we'll get back to that in a minute. But pretty soon we're going to talk about Maharaj Prithu after King Venu. We won't get into that now, but it kind of shows the sages are going to bring Maharaj Prithu in, creating him from Venu, and to show what the difference is between the bad leader who spoils people's spiritual life and the person who sets the good example. When King Indradyumna was on the earth, all the people had a peaceful kingdom because the ruler themselves lives by the spiritual principles. And we have Maharaj Bharat. The planet was named after him, Bharat Varsa. And I have many leaders in the Vedic times who would be trained to lead as a matter of service. Just like in the Bhakti Vrikshas, they call the leader a servant leader. And so they led. Then who else are some of the greatest leaders? Of course, Lord Chaitanya sets the example of being the leader of the Sankirtan movement. And was he very strict about his engagement and very enthusiastic about his chanting? Did he go out and do all the things himself? Did he not walk all the way around India? When he went for a walk, it was a real walk, all the way around, chanting everywhere. And he didn't engage in intoxication. He wouldn't let the women talk to him privately. You know, some of them, like in Bhaktisiddhanta's time, that people didn't like Babaji's because some of them had several girlfriends. So what is better, to pretend that you're like a Babaji and have several girlfriends, or just get one wife? So one incarnation came along of God called Rama, and he took the Ekapati Vrata, that Ekapatni Vrata, that he only had one wife. And he showed how to be an ideal king. When he was banished to the forest, his brother Bharat was supposed to rule the kingdom, but he took the shoes of Rama and put them on the throne, and he only ruled it long enough until Rama could come back. This is the idea, is that when people see a good ruler, they're not fighting for power, but they want to help them be the ruler. And then when it comes their turn, they have been trained to do the things properly. We see that with some of the Muslim kings. It talks like Nawab Hussain Shah, how he killed the other Nawab, and then he became Nawab himself, and then later on somebody did the same thing to him. Well, the kind of leader who kills the other leader to become a leader is not going to be able to stop the people from spoiling their spiritual life. He's going to set the bad example. So Lord Rama set the perfect example of how to be a king. And when Rama comes back for the coronation, all the people are so happy to have a leader like this. And when one person complained that Sita's impure, Sita went into the fire. And when he went in the fire, the Maya Sita was burned up, and the real Sita came out to prove that she's pure. So we find that Lord Rama set the perfect example of how to be a perfect king and how to act. And Krishna showed this himself when he came and was a ruler. He put Ugrasena in charge. When he got rid of Jarasandha, he trained his son Sahadev how to run the kingdom, and did it properly. He didn't take the things over just for his advantage. You see the things like Napoleon and Hitler, when they took over countries, they took over it for their own advantage. Now, did Krishna go, one day did he decide that he was just going to attack the Kurus and take the kingdom over and use it for his own purpose? How long did Krishna start analyzing this situation? I thought it was amazing, because when the battle's about to start, Dhritarashtra, who is blind, says to his assistant Sanjaya, "What did my sons and the sons of Pandu do being desirous to fight?" He's having this inkling that maybe his family can't win. But maybe he should have thought of this before the battle. It's like I choose someone to a battle, and then I say, do they have guns? Do they have lots of friends? I should find this out before. When did Krishna analyze and check out the situation of the battlefield of Kurukshetra? When did he first check it out? How long before the battle was it? Anybody know? About 112 years before. As soon as Krishna killed Kamsa, he told Akrura to go to Hastinapur and see what is the situation between the Pandavas and between the Kurus, and how they're thinking to rule the kingdom, and if they're going to be fair with the Pandavas. He started analyzing the situation, and trying to deal with it like these sages are. They didn't just rush in hearing a rumor. This is the way a good leader does. You can't say a rumor about someone and then the leader comes to punish them without checking it out. This is how, like, children can become sociopaths, where they think right and wrong doesn't matter. As long as I make other people look like it's their fault, I'm okay. You know what kind of parenting brings this? If the one child comes and tells the parents, my brother did this, even though they did it, they blame it on the brother. The parents punish the brother without checking it out. So if someone thinks, I can do something wrong, and someone else gets blamed for it, well, then it's their fault, isn't it? If I do something wrong and someone else gets blamed, doesn't that mean it's their fault? Does it? No? You're sure? But they're the one being punished for that. Doesn't that mean they're wrong? So if a person thinks that, doesn't matter what's right or wrong, I just have to come out on top myself. And then they say you counsel the sociopath. He just figures how to get away with the things without being caught. They can't conceive they're wrong. They don't think of right and wrong. They just think what's good for me is good and what's bad for me is bad. So we don't want leaders like that. So Krishna analyzed this situation. Krishna went to negotiate with the Kurus to give them a chance. Maybe we can split the kingdom. Maybe we can do things. And Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra, he says, well, when Krishna came to negotiate, he figured, well, we'll just capture you, Krishna. And so Krishna shows part of his universal form. Kind of like when Kamsa wanted to kill the child of Vasudeva and Devaki and threw the child, before it hit the ground, it came up as Durga with all the arms and said, you fool, the child who's destined to kill you was born somewhere else. So Kamsa thought the same thing. You know, he had failed so many times and to send the demons. And then when Krishna came to Mathura, he sent the elephant to kill him. Elephant got killed. He had the wrestlers wrestle with Krishna and Balaram. These big wrestlers looked like they were going to kill Krishna, but Krishna and Balaram were claiming them, and then they grabbed them by the hand and threw them, right? So then Kamsa thinks, okay, fine, I'm going to hear it? What happened? Did it blow up? I'm a bit faulty. Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay. So, you think there's a saying, if you can't beat them, join them? Did Kamsa think that way? After that, after he'd failed every single time, and after he'd failed with the elephant and with the wrestlers, then did he say, okay, Krishna, we're going to join you? Did he make another mistake? He says, we're going to arrest Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yasoda and the cowherd men, and we're going to arrest Vasudeva and Devaki. And was that a mistake? It was a mistake, but it was the last mistake he ever made, because Krishna dumped over the dais and dragged him down and killed him and dragged him around. So he quit making mistakes after that. But you'd think at that point you'd realize this person can't be beaten, I better join them. But some people don't give up. Duryodhana, when Krishna showed part of the universal form, he says, I don't care if you're God. I want to fight for this kingdom. I want what I want when I want it. But if you can't get it, then what's the point of it? If he shows he's God, wouldn't it be maybe better to try to do it his way? Or are you going to force God to do it your way? Or you can be 50% surrendered. What that means is that 3 days a week you do everything the way God wants it, and the other 3 days you force him to do it your way. Does that make you 50% surrendered? Does it? It's like, this is what we call balance. Half the time I do it Krishna's way. The other half I force him to do it my way. How well will that work for you? Huh? Pandraka came to Krishna and he had the 4 symbols of Vishnu. And he said to Krishna, I want you to give up the 4 symbols of Vishnu right now. And Krishna says, all right, we'll start with the disc, but be careful. And the disc cut his head off. So maybe he shouldn't have tried to fight Krishna over that. Tell him give up the symbols. So we see that when the leaders are good, people will follow them. Especially they set the example. As Krishna says, that whatever the great people do, the common men follow. And whatever exemplary acts they do, the whole world pursues. So since they follow the leaders, it behooves us to train people to be leaders, or train the ones who are there to at least do something good. Because you see, you switch from monarchy to democracy, and then they think the people elected were inefficient, so they get somebody who's an autocratic ruler, or then they don't like the person they elected and they elect someone else. But it must find someone who's qualified, right? It's just like if I need a doctor, and I said I hired several plumbers to be a doctor, and none of them did a good job of being a doctor. So do you know any other plumbers I can contact? But if you need a doctor, you don't contact plumbers. You need to find someone who's qualified in this field, who's a Rajrishi, someone that tells them. We'll be discussing this tomorrow about some of the things that a leader should do to make the people feel comfortable, how they create a situation so that their spiritual life is going well. And quite often, the leaders that promise people things, and they say, we're going to lower taxes and increase the benefits. It sounds great, but that's the worst thing you can do. You're going to decrease the income and start spending more? Does that sound like a problem? Right? And they say here at the temple, we're going to build a whole big thing down there, and we're going to serve 18 items at the Sunday feast, and we're going to refuse to accept donations. Tell people they can come here, and we don't want them to contribute anything. Does that sound good? No. But that's quite often politicians promise much more. At least President Kennedy said, don't ask what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. So the leader is trying to do more for God and more for the people than he takes from himself. Then the people may get the idea too to be of more service. Because when we have the duty-based ethics or the rights-based ethics, and everybody's trying to increase their rights, which rights are important? My rights are, right? Not anybody else's. But if it's a duty-based ethics, each person does their duty to God and to the other people, then everybody automatically gets their rights. But if somebody sets that example, people will want to follow this because they also see that person's happy and they're exemplary. So we should strive for that, at least know what it is. Any questions or comments about this? Did I ask any trick questions? Lucia asked that yesterday. Is this a trick question? Sometimes I ask the trick questions just to see if anybody's paying attention. So the good leader is someone that says, do as I say, not as I do. Is that correct? It is? Not as I do. No, that isn't correct. That was another trick question. They're supposed to set the example. Like Prabhupada says, you put a dog on the king's throne and you throw a shoe. Will he act like a king or will he chase the shoe? You can make yourself king for the day, but if you don't act like one, well, they fall. If you set the wrong example, unfortunately they do. They're just looking for someone. Well, they do it. If someone else does it, it must be right, isn't it? But it's not true by the numbers, right? 500 trillion flies eat all kinds of horrible stuff. So they have the numbers, we should follow them. If the numbers are what's important, right? 500 trillion flies can't be wrong. Someone wrote that in the bathroom. 500 trillion flies can't be wrong. Eat stool. Is that a proper conclusion? One person only does this, right? So it's not a proper conclusion? And some people have ideas like everything in moderation. Is that true? So I slap you. And what do you do? Well, I'm slapping you, but I did it in moderation. I take some of your money. Oh, what do you do? I took money, but I did it in moderation. And I served you some dirt for breakfast, but it's okay. I gave you a moderate amount, because after all, everything in moderation, right? Is that right? I give you rotten food. As long as you do it in moderation, it's okay? You can go out and rob the bank as long as you do it in moderation. The police show up and you say, I robbed the bank, but I do it in moderation. Will that help you? No. So any question or comment, or shall we end there? So we're going to find out more tomorrow in verse 17. All right? Hare Krishna. You have to listen up, because I tend to ask trick questions, and that's to make sure people are listening, right? It makes people listen when I come up with trick questions, doesn't it? Well, we hope. So is the purpose of life to always forget Krishna and never remember him? So we don't want to follow people who set that example. Many people do, though, right?